Thanks for joining. Tad or Thad Lively? Tad or Thad Lively? All right. Ryan Laughlin?
He was unable to join us today.
Ryan's unable to join us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Margaret McKenzie? Margaret McKenzie?
Yes, I'm here. This is Margaret McKenzie, co-owner of Salt Free Hemp. We farm hemp and raise a variety of animals on a small scale, and also a member of the Cattle Women's Association in the area.
Thanks for joining. Wendy?
Hi,
are there two Wendy's? I'm Wendy Mosher I'm the CEO of New West Genetics. We are hemp variety developers and geneticists. My two partners, one is a professor of plant genetics at CSU, and my other partner is the head breeder, canola breeder for Cargill.
All right, thanks. David Moore? David Moore? All right. John Raftopoulos?
Yeah, this is John. Good morning. I'm on the western slope of Colorado. We're a large cow-calf operation. We have a commercial bull program and registered bull program, and also we're involved in 2 feedlots in Nebraska and currently developing and remodeling a feedlot in Beaumont, rather by Grand Junction. So we're very interested in this project, and we do see how it could be very, very beneficial to the livestock industry.
All right. Thanks, John. Jerame Reef?
Hi, this is Jeremy with the 12 Weirville Farms. We're a USD organic certified hemp operation down by Pueblo. And also we have, I'm a managing director of a merger and acquisition company that focuses on ag businesses, as well as I do financial analysis for a 50,000 sow cattle finish operation. So pretty interested in the economics of hemp, as far as feed additive for, real ag production.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. Elizabeth Ryan's in the room.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Ryan. I'm a professor of toxicology at Colorado State University, and I have a national and international program of research on innovative food solutions for gut health of animals, companion animals, livestock, as well as a lot of human work too.
All right. Matt?
Matt Schweigert, Senior Vice President of Canopy Corporation. We're a full-service integrated farm to processing center in Springfield, Colorado.
Thanks for coming. Kevin Shively? Kevin, are you on the line? All right. Rob Silvers to my right.
Hi, I'm Rob Silver. I'm a veterinarian, a 1982 graduate of Colorado State University. Retired from practice about 7 years ago to work in the industry. I'm a chief veterinary officer for Folium Biosciences, which is a vertically integrated hemp company in Colorado Springs. And I've been tasked to explore the value of using hemp for both animal feed and as inclusion into animal nutraceuticals. And so for the last 2 years, I've been working extensively with animals, dogs, cats, and horses, and bring to the panel, I think, my scientific and medical expertise.
So, Rob, from the veterinarian's point of view, any perspective you'd share?
Well, from the veterinarian's point of view, in terms of what I've been observing in terms of animals being exposed to whole plant hemp or byproducts of hemp, it's pretty doggone benign as far as its adverse effects. It is beneficial apparently to animals who need the benefit, but for animals who don't need the benefit, it doesn't seem to have much of an impact. To answer Bill's question about the nutritional value of it, we've done nutritional analyses of our post-extraction hemp, which is what's left after we've removed all of the medical oils from it. It still has like a 5%, half a percent adventitious amount of CBD, but 0 THC, 20% good quality plant protein, 30% good quality fiber, and 50% good quality plant carbohydrates. So I see it as having value for animal feed, whether it's a food animal or for small animals. We just simply need to get the safety studies going in order to show that it's not going to be an impact, and we need to get that FDA approval. Absolutely. So, what you want?
Sounds well. Thank you. And this is a good example of some of us know a lot, some of us know a little, but all of us know something about something, and nobody else knows what each of us know. So that's my Donald Rumsfeld version of describing the room. So there are questions. This group may have the answers to them. There are questions that people outside this room have explored, and we can make that information available. And then there may be some that nobody knows yet. So we'll have to segment that and share aggressively.
Can I just make one comment?
Sure.
Forgive me, I don't want to overstep you, but I just want to clarify that in industrial hemp, we do not use the word medical. So we just, that term medical oils or cannabinoids, we just don't use that term medical. So it's kind of a no-no. So just to start this off on the right page, we don't use that word in hemp. But I understand where you're coming from.
No, my bad. In fact, as I was composing what I was going to say, I kept saying to myself, Rob, don't.
It's okay. Gotcha. No problem.
All right. Thanks. And
Thank
again,
you.
the focus of this group is on the feed or nutritional
Yes.
component of this, not the medicinal. Blaine Thompson's in the room?
Yes, Blaine Thompson, co-owner of Death Prairie Farm down in Valles, Colorado. I'm basically a fifth-generation farmer and rancher. Just wanted to see that, plus a third-year grower of residential hemp as well.
Right.
So we're just trying to get a little bit of everything involved in it. I'm said fifth generation, so we're just trying to think outside the box.
Keep going. All right. Thanks, Blaine. Ethan?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Ethan Voorhees, I live in north central Iowa. I've been looking for 2 years to move to Colorado and to be able to feed my animals industrial hemp for a variety of different reasons, mainly because it fits well in a regenerative system. Looking forward to having a clear legal path to be able to feed our animal hemp and deliver that to customers.
All right. Thanks, Ethan. Chris Whitman?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, my name is Chris Whitman, and I've got a bachelor's degree from Kansas State University in feed science and management. And I've been involved in the animal feed industry throughout the Midwest and Colorado. I'm also involved with quite a few other industrial hemp companies throughout Colorado and internationally as well. So I've got some connections throughout Europe and stuff that could be a benefit as well. Really supportive on this. I've been a farmer and rancher my whole life, and seventh generation Colorado native as well for farming and ranching, and just see a huge benefit of bringing this to the livestock industry, and just would like to help do my part for it.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Brent Young's in the room?
Yes, my name is Brent Young. I'm an ag economist with CSU Extension, a regional economist. My office is in Sterling, Colorado. I think for our group, from the economic side, I think we really look forward to the development of a viable market. Obviously, with the downturn in the ag economy, this can be very helpful. I think that viable market would facilitate a couple of things that I think are important for moving hemp forward. One would be a standard grading system, so that we have some quality control, would be able to market the product more at the raw level more efficiently. And then also, I think a viable market would really result hopefully in robust trade between producers and processors and end users, and especially that trade between the producer and the processor. If we've got robust trade, then we have an opportunity for price discovery and having a feel for what the true price of the product is at any point in the year. And those are very important components of moving the product to a mature agricultural market. In terms of what do I hope that we get out of the exercise and what should we avoid, I hope that we really have a fact-based report. I think there's a lot of hype and misinformation out there. We really need to try to reduce that as much as possible. And then I really struggled with the third question, what myth, because there are a number of myths out there. I'm going to come at this a little differently than probably many people in the room, because I field questions probably on a weekly basis, either from producers who are desperate to find an alternative crop and are really grasping at anything they can find, to agricultural lenders who have been asked by their clients to finance this crop and have some real concerns about it. And so the producers, I think, are in a very vulnerable place in that because commodity prices are low, there are no margins, they're losing money, they're really struggling to find alternatives. They tend to take whatever wild claim that's out there and tend to take that to heart and invest time, effort, and resources that frankly they don't have to expend at this point searching for something that will work. So I'm just going to throw out this is a quote actually from a research agronomist that I work with, and I know this may not be directly related to what we're doing in terms of looking at the regulatory side, but again, where I deal with the producers more than I do at this point people who are processing industrial hemp or who are promoting the use of it. His quote was that he hears on a regular basis that hemp requires no water, fertilizer, or pesticide and will have huge yields while regenerating the soil. And he says that's just not the case, and we need to get the word out, especially since producers are really looking for things and be able to provide research-based factual information to them as they consider this is an alternative crop.
Great, thanks. Dave, would you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Dave Theobald with Dr. Fields Botanicals, and I'm similar to you folks, just trying to get started in pet feed and utilization of hemp in the feed, and was fortunate enough to run across the posting of this meeting. I'm glad to be here.
All right, thanks. Anybody in the room that I missed? Anybody online that I missed?
Yeah, this is Richard with AFCO.
Hey, Richard. Sorry.
Hey.
I missed you right after Dr. Bob, didn't I? Okay,
yeah.
Richard, if you'd share AFCO's perspective or your perspective.
Yeah. So a very impressive group. It was kind of nice to go last. So we are the feed regulators. We've been around since 1909. I chair the Association of American Feed Control Officials Ingredient Definition Committee. It's our job to establish common names and definitions used in the ingredient statements for animal food. My name is Richard Tenike. As to the questions, AFCO's welcoming of the use of safe hemp products in animal feed. Each material needs to request a definition to be established. During that process, a safety evaluation, like Charlotte talked about, will be done for feeding it at the levels requested and to the species that's requested. The result will be a recognized intended use of the product and the definition within the AFCO book. We expect to gain a lot of information today, and we will have to, I think one of the things we'll have to avoid is to not get bogged down in non-feed uses. Just to give you what AFCO describes in their ingredient definitions in the beginning of chapter 6 for what a feed use is the definition should be non-proprietary as not to favor one ingredient producer over another. Materials to be used as feed ingredients should have the following attributes. They should be consistent batch to batch. The material should not be a combination of other ingredients. The intended use should not be to mitigate, treat, or diagnose a disease, but rather to provide nutrition, color, taste, or aroma for the animal, or to provide a technical effect in the feed, such as enzyme. It's the manufacturer's responsibility to produce a safe ingredient for its intended purpose. The biggest myth I think that like to dispel is that it takes a long time to establish a definition. a well-developed definition request can get through our process in under 2 years. This is actually less time than we've been talking about hemp already. Most of the ingredients sitting in the review pipeline today are waiting on the firm to respond back to questions from FDA. And we really do appreciate all the technical assistance that FDA provides to AFCO. I think that's it.
Yeah, thanks, Richard, and sorry for the oversight. Anybody else on the line that I have not yet called? Going once. All right, and a final apology for the butchering of anybody's name. We'll get those right. Okie doke. Scott Zier is going to join us here, and Scott's got Ingredient Approval 101 for us, and I'm going to ask him just to kind of give an overview of that in about 5 minutes, and then he can take a few questions. And again, we're not trying to dig in totally, but in 10 minutes, let's just make sure everybody's got a baseline understanding of the different ways that ingredients can be approved. And take it away, Scott.
Okay, now actually I believe it was our first onboarding email. We covered some of this, but we wanted to go through it very quickly just in case some of you haven't had a chance to look at that. So feed is regulated both at the federal and at the state level. At the federal level by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and have the Center for Veterinary Medicine, and they're really the science-based source of information and reviewing any data that's submitted and so forth. At the state level, typically it's through the State Department of Agriculture. In some states it's through a different agency though. And then you have AFCO, or the Association of American Feed Control Officials. AFCO is a non-regulatory body that's main purpose is to promote uniform regulation of feed across the U.S. through both the model bill and model regulations, as well as publishing feed ingredient definitions and terms. And for ingredient approval, and the reason ingredient approval is important, both with the FDA's definition of adulteration, which is incorporated in the AFCO model as well as in most of the state models. One of the definition of adulteration, a feed is adulterated if it contains any food additive that is unsafe within the meaning of Section 409 of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, as well as it's also considered unsafe if it contains any new animal drug that is unsafe within the meaning of Section 512 of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And when you get to Section 409 and Section 512, basically what it states is that unless that ingredient is within an existing exemption or an existing regulation, then it is considered unsafe because it has not been approved. So the ways to get ingredient approval, and this is very simplified. It's not meant to convey everything about the processes, but you have the FDA food additive petition. You have the AFCO official ingredient definition process that Richard had mentioned, and then you have the GRAS, or generally recognized as safe status. And some notes about these pathways. Each one of these really depends on the submitter being able to prove safety and efficacy of the ingredient for its intended purpose and intended species. Ingredients are approved for specific purposes. Any use other than that purpose would be considered an unapproved use of an approved ingredient. And for the generally recognized as safe status, the ingredient has to be generally recognized among qualified experts as having been adequately shown to be safe under the conditions of its intended use, or unless the use of the substance is otherwise excluded from the definition of a food additive. And that's...
Scott?
But I'm sorry?
Scott, Bill Bookup, could I just ask you to clarify, grass for people does not necessarily mean grass for animals, correct?
Yes, and it's generally recognized as safe, and where it kind of ties in with the others, for its intended purpose and for the intended species. There's a lot of differences between human health and animal health. Things that we eat every day, some things you would never give to an animal, such as chocolate. So you can't just take the fact that it's considered safe for humans and automatically extend that to all species. Now, some of the typical data that's required, again, this is not an all-inclusive list, but data you typically require would be identity and composition of the additive, including manufacturing methods and controls, intended use level, and labeling, such as cautions, warnings, shelf life, directions for use, data establishing the intended effect, physical, nutritional, or other technical effect, analytical methods for the additive, a safety evaluation. For pets, that would just be for the targeted animal, but if it's for livestock, you would also want to have safety evaluation for any human food products made from that animal. You would also want to provide any proposed tolerances for the food additive, any proposed regulation related to the use of that ingredient, and an environmental assessment. Are there any questions on those? Yes, sir.
How do those differ between interstate commerce and how they're perceived or international?
Well, all of these are related to more at the national level, either
right.
through the FDA or through AFCO.
So they're equally recognized regardless of which track?
It would be recognized everywhere at that point.
What about internationally?
Internationally, it depends on what country you're shipping to, and I really don't know the requirements of other countries, what they would accept and what they wouldn't. Any other questions?
Anybody on the phone have a question for Scott? All right. Very well. So, good news. We're a few minutes ahead of schedule. More good news. It's time for us to stop having like 60 ears listening and one mouth talking. Let's mix it up a little bit here. So, I mentioned earlier, I spoke with about a dozen of you that represent a cross-section of different stakeholder types. Okay? And in doing so, a number of opinions were shared about where we should draw boundaries and where Veronica's term low-hanging fruit is, and where, no, we must consider this for this reason, etc. Knowing that we have an obligation to deliver a set of recommendations, they could be more specific or less specific, depending upon the available information that supports them, etc. I just want to engage in about a half hour's discussion with those on the phone and those in the room on a few different questions. We know that focus increases success. By the same token, this is an unusual instance that we have so many perspectives from such a broad group of stakeholders all together. So, just want to ask a few questions to see if we can establish some practical boundaries. So the first one is, are there areas we should avoid because they're too controversial?
Yes.
Okay. Veronica says yes. Go ahead.
In my opinion...
Oh, I apologize before I...
Okay.
And those on the phone, this is especially important, but everybody in the room, please remind everyone of your name as you begin to speak. And we'll be taking notes of this and talk about whether we've got some consensus around a boundary or whether that just goes to the group that's considering that, okay? Go ahead, Veronica, thanks.
Okay, this is Veronica. I would say for the purposes of this discussion and the goals for the hemp industry regarding this work group and overall mandate of legislation, we want to avoid medical terms. We want to avoid talking really about cannabinoids or CBD products. I know there are people who want to discuss it, which I think we should, but for the purpose of the actual submission to AFCO, I believe that's all left out for this round and can be addressed at future purpose, but that would be the controversial medical and CBD cannabinoid-based discussions.
Okay, thanks, Veronica. Rob Silver and then Wendy.
This is Rob Silver, and I agree with Veronica, but I think that those substances that are found in hemp need to be discussed from a toxicological standpoint.
Yep.
Okay. Wendy?
I just want to make sure that we clarify when we speak about hemp, especially for people who might be new to it, that there are different parts of the plant that we use and that the grain doesn't contain any psychoactive substances. There's no cannabinoids, there's no THC in the grain, which is what I think should be put forth first because it's not as controversial at all. The seed is for planting, grain is for consumption.
Right.
So but the flower is where the highest concentration of the psychoactives, or THC, and also cannabinoids are coming from. And that's where there's less research and is potentially, you know, has more problems for regulation. So, but you can simply use the grain. You don't have to use the whole thing. So I just want to, when you talk about any products you make, please say whether you're using the flour or the grain. That will help.
So could you elaborate on that a little bit more, where THC exists in the plant and where it doesn't?
Sure, it does not exist in the grain or the seed.
At all?
Well, there can be trace amounts, but very tiny,
trace.
small.
But once you go through your conditioner, you know, you go through your drying conditioner, then it's, you know, it's virtually nothing.
And that's
so to the thousands of a percent.
And that's regardless of cross-pollination with other plants.
Correct.
Okay.
Cross-pollination would impact the following generation.
Got it.
So flour, you know, in the rest of the plant and the fiber, there's minimal amounts of the other cannabinoids, and in the stem or in the root, very minimal. But the flour has the greatest concentrations.
Okay. So we'll go to Bill Bookout, and then I'll open to the phone to hear if anybody would like to chime in on this one. Bill?
Yeah, Bill Bookout. I think you answered my question. It was the stalk of the plant is also devoid of the THC and CBD components.
Not devoid.
Right.
Or minimal.
That's right.
Minimal.
That's right.
The primary sources for those two constituents, or the alternative constituents, would be in the flowering tops and resins of the plant.
Correct. Right. And resin comes
so
from the flower.
So it would not be from grains as well as stalks and other plant parts.
So just one more follow-up question. This is Terry Fankhauser, Colorado Governments. You did make a statement, it would be in the following generation. So if seeds were harvested for replanting or something along those lines, you could see a secondary, third, fourth generation effect in THC being in other parts of the plant.
In the flower only.
In the flower,
the
always.
Grain will not contain cannabinoids ever.
Except
any
for
generation.
Small trace, any generation.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody on the phone want to chime in on this one?
This is Jeremy with 1244 Farms. I would also make sure we consider, you know, not just the seeds, or sorry, the grain, but also, you know, the silage aspect, you know, feeding the waste material like the leaves and the trim from a hemp plant from like a silage standpoint in like the cattle industry. I don't know what the, you know, because it's more than just the flower part of the plant and, you know, the stalk. But I don't know, you know, what the cannabinoid content would be in that type of material. And I would be cautious to get too narrow in the material that we submit. You know, obviously we want to have a very broad discussion on the medical uses, but obviously, you know that's the grain is the low-hanging fruit, obviously, that push through regulations.
Yeah. Elizabeth?
Yeah, it's Elizabeth Ryan. I wanted to just second that I think it's important we address the limits of detection right now are very high. We can detect small molecules at these trace levels, so terms such as minimal or low levels, I think we have the scientific expertise now to quantify any of these compounds. And so I would argue that we should keep all compounds on the table, that we do have reliable measures in the food and all aspects of the plant food, as well as when you're talking about in the animal systems. We have very reliable means to detect many of these compounds of concern, but also with an emphasis on their nutritional.
Yeah. Veronica, go ahead.
I just feel like Wendy was making a good point right there, and I feel like maybe we should clarify what hemp parts of the plant there are. So hemp has the root, the stalk, the seed in most cases, and then flower in other cases, and then there's always the leaf. So green material can be either the flower and the leaf, then there's the stalk, the seed, and the root. For the purposes of submission, at least in this particular case, we're going after the definitions for the seed in two forms. One is hemp seed oil, and one is hemp seed meal cake. And these are definitions that are already used all around the world as approved ingredients for livestock feed in other countries.
Okay.
So can I just ask a question? Would the varietal name for that one have to be associated at this point? Do we want to make sure that's part of it, given varietal potential differences?
You mean varietal of the type of seed, like the seed cultivar? No, it's not necessary, and that's not what the other countries are doing at this point. Hemp doesn't have really much of a margin when it comes to Yeah, like the protein levels or omega-3s.
Grain, right?
Yeah.
There's not a
Yeah.
lot of difference.
Interesting.
There is a difference in cultivars though,
Yeah.
because we can grow them for pharmaceutical purposes, for CBD extraction, or normally the industrial hemp, which is lower in those constituents of THC and CBD. So some people may not know that there are breeding systems for both of those.
Can I just clarify
Yeah,
that?
sorry, and that was Matt Schweigert speaking. Okay.
This is Veronica again. I just want to clarify, because this is, sometimes we forget that not everybody knows this, but there is two types of hemp farmers in the hemp industry right now. One is their traditional pollinated crop farmer, like myself. I have male and female. I grow for seed primarily and other byproducts. Then our second type of hemp farmer in this industry right now is a female-only hemp farmer. They're not pollinating their crop. They're not growing for seed. They're primarily going after CBD byproduct. Neither of them are bad or good. It's just the two types of hemp we have right now growing in this industry as farmers. Pollinated version, traditional hemp farmers, and the non-pollinated.
That's helpful.
This is Rob Silver. I'd like to point out that for the companies that are doing the pharmaceutical extractions, that they are growing large volumes of plant material, and they're extracting these potentially toxic.
Flower, right?
I'm sorry?
Are they extracting the flower?
They're extracting the flowers and the leaves, yes.
Yeah.
They're removing all of these toxic compounds except for a very small adventitious amount of CBD. Speaking for Folium, we have 200,000 tons of this material that is, and this next season we're planting even a larger crop. So for the use for animal feed, there's a great deal of this byproduct available that is devoid of these problematic compounds. And so I think that needs to be included in the discussion as well.
So, Rob.
Yeah. This is John Raftopoulos. Has there been any experimentation or any data? What happens when those hemp materials go through the rumen? Is it detoxified even more, if we want to call it a toxin? But
we need that. We need to do that work. This is Rob Silver. That is research that needs to be done.
Right.
As well as feed efficiency studies, because I think that potential exists.
Okay. David Bush?
Yeah, I just wanted to reflect on a couple things that Rob and Veronica said, which I agree with, in that we have to recognize the reality in the industry. And there are a lot of people who are growing hemp for seed and making seed products. There's a lot of people growing hemp for other products, primarily extracts from the plant material, such as what Folium Biosciences is doing. It would be self-defeating exercise here if we fail to recognize the reality of the industry, the fact that there's a lot of activity in both realms. There are companies right now that are making pet foods that are infused with CBD. They're making dietary supplements. They're selling them online. You can find them today. For us to fail to recognize that there are all kinds of products out there, including lots of cannabinoid products, we should not shy away from that. That's what the industry is doing. And if we're going to try to be relevant here, we need to